Valtteri Bottas is the enigma of Formula 1 to me. When it comes to rating how good he is compared to everyone else, I can never really get a good grasp from season to season due to his fluctuating performances. From race to race, he can go from unbeatable on his best days to unbearable to watch on his worst. However, despite the constant and heavy criticism of Valtteri Bottas, especially by fans on social media, I genuinely believe that in a really strange way, Valtteri has become both over and underrated all at the same time. And that is what we're going to be talking about in this video. Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Aldas, and really quickly before we do jump into the video, I recently did a collaboration with Steph from All About Steph F1, and we talked about the current Red Bull driver lineup and whether they should stick with it or twist and go with someone else for the future, and what is the best driver lineup for the team going forward. It was a really fun video to make, guys, and definitely go check it out and also subscribe to her channel as well. All of the links will be in the description box down below. And of course, guys, also don't forget, if you do enjoy the content on my channel, then don't forget to drop a like, smash that subscribe button, and don't forget to check out my social medias. Instagram and Twitter will be above. But guys, let's get into this one. Now, there's no doubt that F1 fans, especially on social media and even in the comment section of my videos, can absolutely rip Bottas apart. But in my opinion, I don't think he's anywhere near as bad as some people make him out to be. The first problem is that he will always be compared to Lewis Hamilton, and that is not a comparison that anyone wants to go up against, because when you compare any driver to someone who is potentially the greatest of all time, in reality, no one could beat Hamilton on the form he is at the moment, especially over the course of a full season. So in some regards, Valtteri is already on the back foot, kind of up against an immovable object in a sense. However, Valtteri is a fast driver, and this is something that people rarely give him credit for. After a poor 2018 season, he really upped his game in qualifying in 2019 and actually got more pole positions than Lewis Hamilton. And although over the course of the season he did get out-qualified, the average gap in quali was just over 1/10 of a second, which was the second closest average throughout the entire field. And that is seriously impressive up against someone who is statistically the most successful qualifier in F1 history. Now, he's managed to carry that pace over into 2020 that he found last year, and although Lewis Hamilton, like he usually does, has found yet another gear and is so far beating Bottas in qualifying both in pole positions and in their head-to-head, the two Mercedes drivers have the closest average qualifying gap throughout the entire field. And yes, although Lewis Hamilton is beating him so far in 2020 in qualifying, it's also not awful considering how close these two are. However, there is no doubt that as a package, he's not as strong as Nico Rosberg was back in the early hybrid era against Lewis Hamilton. But the gap between Rosberg and Bottas is a little distorted in my opinion, because Lewis, since losing to Nico in 2016, has become faster, more consistent, and just in general has become a smarter driver compared to the driver he was back then. Now, this specific point is actually something that I'm going to be talking about in depth in a video coming up very soon, which is just being finalized. So yeah, definitely look forward to that. But whichever way you look at it, Valtteri is up against one of the greatest drivers in the history of Formula 1, which is never going to be easy. We've seen this before, however, with drivers like Rubens Barrichello and also Mark Webber as well, drivers who are highly regarded despite losing to dominant teammates. However, how do their numbers stack up against what Bottas has done? Rubens Barrichello, in 5 seasons as Michael Schumacher's teammate, scored 412 points out of 1,090, which means he scored 37.8% of the total points. Mark Webber, in 5 seasons as Vettel's teammate, scored 947.5 points out of the total 2,357.5 points, which meant Mark scored a total of 40.2% of the points. However, when we look at Valtteri Bottas in 3 full seasons, excluding the current 2020 season, Hamilton has scored 879 points out of the possible 2,062, which is a 42.6% share of the total amount of points scored by Mercedes over the past 3 full seasons. Now, if you include the points that have been scored so far in 2020 as of the Tuscan Grand Prix, then the percentage actually only goes down by 0.1%, so it's not that big of a difference. However, having a close to 5% difference in the total points scored between Barrichello and Bottas, that is a very substantial margin. And Barrichello was no joke. At the time of recording, he is still the most experienced driver in the history of Formula 1, and although in 2020 he will eventually be surpassed by Kimi Raikkonen, he is still regarded as one of the best drivers to never win a world championship, which again, I've actually talked about in a previous video. So yeah, Barrichello was by no means a bad driver. So if Valtteri statistically is actually closer to Hamilton than Barrichello was to Schumacher or Webber was to Vettel, is Valtteri Bottas really that bad, or is Lewis Hamilton just that good? Well, perhaps that's even the bigger question, because there are so many people that think that just because Valtteri is finishing behind Lewis more often than not, that he is a terrible driver, someone who is stuck in the midfield miles off the pace in a Mercedes, which for the most part is usually the best car on the field, whilst in reality, Valtteri is a quality driver with lots of pace in quali, who for the most part stays out of trouble, and over the past 2 seasons has been either very close to Hamilton or even beating him on many occasions. Now, don't get me wrong, he definitely has his off days, which is the difference between him and Lewis, but in terms of speed in both qualifying and the race, he is always right up there, and he is always pushing Lewis, even if the eventual result of a Mercedes 1-2 might make it seem like a comfortable one. And even mentally, Lewis Hamilton himself has said in interviews that after 2019, he had to go back and work on his qualifying for this season because Valtteri had the edge on him in 2019. And that's the thing about Valtteri Bottas. At the end of the day, he is a good driver despite what a lot of people say about him, and that is why Mercedes have kept him on for this long, because he doesn't do anything exceptionally right, but at the same time he doesn't really do anything wrong either, and that is why he keeps getting these 1-year extension contracts. They know how good he is, but at the same time they know that he doesn't exactly rock the boat at Mercedes, and that is why there is just such a great partnership over there at the moment. However, as fans, we also know that he's not exactly the most competitive driver that could be in that Mercedes seat as well, up against Lewis Hamilton, and that is what causes most of the criticism. Now, despite all of the positives that Valtteri has, fundamentally with where F1 is right now in 2020, the frustration from fans is that Valtteri just doesn't put Lewis under enough pressure throughout the entire season. We've seen him go on mini runs in the championship where he looks like he could be a genuine contender, and whenever there's a glimmer of hope, we go through the Bottas 2.0, the Bottas 3.0, and right now I think we're at Bottas 3.5? I don't know, but the point is, the biggest problem for Bottas, in my opinion, is that he just doesn't have that killer edge when it comes to overtaking and wheel-to-wheel combat, and more importantly, doing it under pressure. This has become so prevalent that whenever I see Valtteri up against someone he really needs to overtake, I just never have that confidence that he'll be able to go for the move, pull it off quickly, cleanly, and make it look easy. When I watch drivers like Hamilton, Verstappen, and even Ricciardo race, there's a confidence that I have with these drivers watching them. I always tell myself, of course Hamilton will just cut through the field like a hot knife through butter, of course Max will find a way past whoever tries to stop him, and of course Daniel Ricciardo will go for that dive bomb. It's what these guys do, and when you watch them, they give you this confidence that subconsciously you just know they will get it done and make it look easy, because again, that is what they do. However, when it comes to Valtteri, he just doesn't give you that same confidence that he can go for the move or even turn a bad day into a good day. It always seems like when the opportunity arises, for one reason or another, he just doesn't have the ability to go grab it for himself. As an example, in Monza this year, on a day when Hamilton, due to a mistake by the team, was down the field and unable to take the win, Valtteri needed to put the pressure on Hamilton to at least give him some hope in the title fight. But instead, he got a bad start right from the off, and then after the red flag, was stuck for the rest of the race in the midfield in P5 in between Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo, unable to make his way forward, whilst Hamilton, coming out 30 seconds behind the race leader and in P15, managed managed to work his way up the field to 7th, and in the end only finished 17 seconds behind Pierre Gasly, which actually was a decent recovery drive after having to serve a 10-second stop-go penalty. And then we come to Mugello, a race where again Valtteri had a chance to win. All throughout that chaotic race, he was within a few seconds of Hamilton, hoping for a safety car, and when the final red flag and restart came, all he needed to do was get an okay start and grab the slipstream of Hamilton to overtake him around the outside of turn 1 like Lewis did the restart before. But again, did he ever really give you the confidence that he was going to be able to pull it off? No, and again he bottled it at the restart, not able to even follow Hamilton into turn 1, but actually got overtaken by Daniel Ricciardo in the Renault and letting slip another opportunity for a race win. Now again, despite all of this, that is kind of one of the biggest frustrations, because when you consider the car that he has at his disposal, he's just not consistent enough and struggles to consistently keep up with Hamilton, who finds new ways of improving every season. And it's that word with Bottas, when you narrow down the biggest issue, it's not speed, it's consistency. So this is why I feel as if Bottas is at times both over and underrated by some people. In a sense, he's fighting a losing battle going up against Lewis Hamilton, because he's never really going to get anywhere near him over the course of a full season. He can have little runs there and there, but Lewis is faster, he's more consistent, and the way he leads the team, the way he takes over the strategy, and the way he is mentally, yeah, Valtteri is just always fighting a losing battle in that scenario. However, Valtteri is a good driver. He's not getting lapped every single race. He's not racing, half a second lap slower than his teammate, and he's putting in relatively good performances against an all-time great. But the problem for Valtteri is that a driver like Lewis, with his racing ability, can manufacture wins. Regardless of where Hamilton starts, you can never count him out of a race win. But with Bottas, he relies on great qualifying performances so much, because when it comes to coming through the field and driving the strategy himself and taking the win away from drivers like Lewis, Max or Charles, sadly he just isn't able to do that. In a sense, he kind of lives and dies by how well he qualifies, and that is just the problem, because he's up against a man who is arguably the greatest qualifier in the history of the sport, and a man who very soon will have more than 100 pole positions to his name. And this is kind of the point of my video, because in conclusion, that's okay. Not everyone is a Lewis Hamilton or Max Verstappen. Valtteri is just Valtteri, a great driver who has his moments, but a great driver who, like many before him, Mark Webber, David Coulthard, Rubens Barrichello, has come up against an all-time great. The truth is, we expect so much from Valtteri, because when we look at Lewis, he makes everything look so easy. Lewis has set the bar so high, and people take it for granted so much, just saying that everything is down to the car, that people think it's easy, when in reality, it's anything but. Valtteri is a very good driver. I don't think there's any doubt about that. He's a driver who, in my opinion, deserves more respect, but he has come up against something very, very special. Well guys, there you go. That is my video on Valtteri Bottas. Now, let me know all of your thoughts in the comments box below, because whenever we talk about Valtteri, there is always some spicy and controversial takes, and yeah, I cannot wait to see what you guys think. Now, if you did enjoy this video, then don't forget to drop a like, smash that subscribe button, and don't forget to check out my social medias. Instagram and Twitter will be above. And guys, I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.